In a recent article that was in the Associated Press, researchers studying caves on the Indonesian islands of Sulawesi and Muna completed carbon dating some residue associated with stenciled handprints on the wall. And they were delighted to learn that the prints date from around 68,000 years ago. These prints are the oldest known of this nature found to date and may indicate that our ancestors were expressing their creativity, working together as a group culture, and it certainly tells us that they had a desire to be witnessed and to tell a story and to communicate the happenings of their lives and let the world know that they were there. I have to admit, I'm quite fascinated by the work of archaeologists and paleontologists and others who study the ancient past, looking for artifacts and sites that help us uncover secrets of our human ancestors. They seem to keep working to answer those time-honored questions like, where did we come from and why are we here and how did we populate the earth and why are there these weird animals there and these interesting animals here and all those kind of things. And as I watch and read and listen and dig deeper, I'm left with a few bits of understanding. I have to admit, a few more questions of my own, and a couple of conclusions that seem to fit the patterns and possibilities that these scientists have uncovered. It seems that we humans have an amazing and incredible capacity for creativity. As we developed and got larger brains, well, those brains developed in a way that opens us up to original thought, to creative expression in many forms, to questions of why and what and how. They helped us move into a place of being better problem solvers. And that helped us find new methods and strategies and technologies for living our lives. And our lives evolved and changed over time because of those capacities. Even today, we continue to search for answers and possibilities throughout our worldly tenure. And we keep looking for ways to make things better or different or just find something that we didn't know before. And among our many traits, we seem to have also an incredible need to connect and to communicate, to be seen and acknowledged, to get the attention and companionship of other people, to share information, often in the guise of stories, and to leave some record of our existence for others. I'm wondering if those people 68,000 years ago knew that somebody would enter that cave 68,000 years later and go, oh, somebody was here. We've developed ways to share our knowledge and understanding in mutually accepted methods. So somewhere between, not quite sure, can't nail this down any tighter at this point, between 50 and 150,000 years ago, using that power of our creative brains, humans seem to have moved from a form of gestural communications to specific sounds that substitute for concepts and ideas. They became words. Researchers theorize that the need to work cooperatively and hunt and make tools and bond socially moved these early people to adapt perhaps music, certainly vocal sounds, gestures, and thoughts into commonly understood words. And as groups of people, of course, interacted, and they interacted a lot, they learned and adapted the words of others into their collective language. They helped one another learn new concepts to expand their understanding of things beyond their immediate environment. Language took over and became the dominant way to communicate with one another. And language, of course, is our tool for more effective sharing with one another. Don't have a word for that? Well, somewhere along the line, we'll make up a word for that. We have a means to answer questions about how we got here, what we're meant to do as a species, how and why we are impacted and sustained by the natural world, to communicate and teach the norms and expectations of our social groups, to express feelings and emotions, and thoughts and beliefs. We began to tell stories, to narrate our lives in the moment and for the future as well. We have not stopped telling stories since the moment we could speak, and I think there's stories being told even in those cave paintings. And I want you to imagine the mental capacities you'd have to live in an oral culture, a storytelling culture. You have to be able to remember, to access facts and information and examples and words quickly. And we have continued to tell those stories and continue to use those abilities to pass on knowledge and for many other purposes throughout these thousands of years. And of course, we all have our personal stories as well. Not only do we have our stories that help reinforce cultural messages and share important information or express spiritual understandings, we have those stories that help frame our awareness and also help us put together our alibis when we need them. All of us have the capacity to come up with excuses as well as explanations. And it seems, as I watch these and read and research, it seems that every advance in our human ability to communicate with one another is then either preceded or followed by advances in technology, and often both. So where it's 98,000, whatever it was, 68, 90, what was it? Anyway, God, I'm getting old. Anyway, we're going to leap to 4,200 BCE, and we're going to transport ourselves to Egypt. We're going to go there because, like other cultures, Mayan, Incan, for example, the Egyptians developed symbolic ways to capture and communicate their existence. So they started moving from solely an oral culture to a culture that had written ways of showing what the words might be. A symbolic way to capture and communicate their existence, we call them hieroglyphics. They were symbols for names and words and ideas, and there are symbols that are combined to capture complex concepts. The symbols are drawn or carved or inked on papyrus in order that they might be shared with others and used for practical purposes at the time, but also because that gives them the opportunity to endure and be acknowledged and seen by other people who might follow them. And on the heels of hieroglyphics, not surprisingly, written language then started to emerge. I've been watching the NOVA program, Human, and paleontologist Ella Al-Shamahi has been talking about how these advances and how we move through these years and learn and change the way we communicate with one another. She describes the development of writing among the enslaved mind workers of Egypt. And they had observed how their overlords, so to speak, documented their existence, and perhaps because of that, they yearned to have a name and a presence and an awareness and a humanness too. Anyway, in the mines, they have found amazing examples of how they have taken symbols, translated them into sounds, and that is the precursor of the alphabets of the world. If you haven't seen that series, I'd encourage you to look at it. I think it's quite fascinating. So with hieroglyphics and written language, well, a new kind of career opportunity opens up. You can be a scribe. You can be a person who is taught to understand, recreate, and communicate through the use of symbols. A person, or words, and symbols for the words, a person who is available to provide this service to those who need to communicate with others. At this time, and for a long time, only about 1% of the population was literate, knew how to use those symbols, knew what they meant, knew how to put them down and make them make sense. It was a very special skill for a very small portion of the population. And when I thought about the use of scribes, I thought, well, I imagine that it is this point where an element of trust starts becoming important in these kinds of interactions. You have to trust that the scribe knows what they're doing, will translate your thoughts and ideas faithfully into the message that they put down and has the integrity to have your best interests in mind in doing the work. So perhaps this is where we develop the use of references for employment. You have to tell me what you've done for other people so I know that I can trust you to do what I need to have done. So we start researching a person's background, and we talk with their previous employers to discern their work habits and their reliability. The elements of power, of course, and adequate compensation, loyalty, integrity, honesty, well, those become a part of the consideration of who you are going to trust to be your scribe, and perhaps even job interviews, which are another form of storytelling. Well, perhaps those begin to happen so that you can see the potential scribe face to face and make an evaluation of their job worthiness. Now, over the centuries, we have continued to develop strategies and think about ways that we hope will reveal to us when someone is telling the truth. We understand that some communication, importantly, involves literal truth. It's facts and figures, instructions, dates and times and testimony. It's true. Everyone would agree that's what happened, that's what it means, that's what it is. And we have other more nuanced communications that are truths. They may hold cultural wisdom, they may explain historical events, they may explain cultural norms, and these are often shared in the form of morality tales or fables and culturally specific stories and narratives. And over the years, too, we've come to believe that you can discern when people are telling us the truth. We look for consistency in what they're saying. We look for behavioral deviations from their usual demeanor. And we try to catch verbal and nonverbal cues. You know, people who play poker look for tells in their opponents. They look for things that will let them know whether their partner actually has the hand they're bidding on or whether they're trying to bluff. So we check to see if the person seems calm or agitated. We observe their gestures and their mannerisms. We focus on their eye movements, if they seem tense or relaxed, if their narrative seems spontaneous or rehearsed, perhaps, and we note the pace of their speech. And often these do help us tell what is fact and what is fiction. But we also need to remember that humans are infinitely creative. And there are people, we've heard about them certainly, who may not share the same value we do about speaking the truth or being trustworthy, the importance of honesty, or respecting the worth and dignity of others, or doing things that are legal. So join me now in the 20th century. I'm going to skip over some important technological advances, some things I know that you know about: the invention of the movable type press in 1440 by Gutenberg, the issue of people being incredibly, continuing to be illiterate up to that point, and then when books and papers came along, the literacy rates jumped immensely in world populations. Typewriters, ballpoint pens, telephones, telegraphs, televisions, well, you get the idea. And now we are here in the computer age. We've moved far from the huge electronic contraptions of the 1950s to having an incredibly functional and useful computer that almost 72% of the population has access to and uses. That's world population. A cell phone. According to the World Economic Forum, in developed nations, that percentage jumps up to 96%. And at this point in human history, where there are somewhere between 8.5 and 9 billion of us on the planet, it's estimated that only 14% of the world's population has never made or received a phone call. We have 24/7 access to an unmanageable amount of data, entertainment, politically motivated commentary, news, and fake news, spending opportunities, self-help, and medical advice. And there are all kinds of other more nefarious things that I'm not familiar with because I have no clue about how you get to the dark web, but I understand it's pretty interesting out there. And some of us, or a lot of us, it appears, are getting more and more communications that have been generated by computer programs operating independently of human input in the moment. And the capacity and possibility of the computer age has opened the door to people who choose to post false narratives, dubious facts, and communications designed to influence or sway the opinions and behavior or the understanding of truth of users. And here we sit, watching our screen, going, is this real? Is this AI? Is that a donkey? And all of this interaction is interestingly at a remove. We are no longer sitting face to face, communicating with the person who is sending this information. We may see a video, that's true, it can happen. Sometimes we're on Zoom or other platforms for meeting together. But most of the time, we are not face to face with the people with whom we are communicating. And in those cases, our strategies for discerning the truth once again need to be shifted to reflect our interactions in this kind of information environment. So what new approaches do we need to incorporate in our internet use? What habits do we have to think about to get for us the truest and most honest information, news, and advice? The first thing that comes to mind, and the first thing that's cited by those who talk a lot about how to deal with AI, is you need to check out the citations given in any material that arrives on your screen from AI, and at this point, from any other source. You need to dig deeper. So what we thought would be a faster strategy of sharing information, which it is, but in order to ensure that we are reading something that's true, we need to follow the path through the citations that are given for the article to make sure that those places, those resources even exist. They may be put there to make it look legitimate, but when you click on the link to go to the source, you find out that what the link is based on is something that's totally irrelevant to the question that was on the plate, doesn't exist at all, or is from another news source that from your experience or from other people's experience, you know to be not particularly reliable. So we need to check, and we need to follow up, and we need to do our due diligence on those communications. The other thing we need to do is do some more research to find a list of trusted resources that we vet for ourselves, which we know we can rely on to share factual, current, and believable information. That means we go check out all of those interesting advertising opportunities to find out if this miracle solution really will help you lose 233 pounds overnight. God, I wish. We need to find out if we are learning the truth of what is happening, or the closest thing to the truth that we can find. Some news organizations, some websites, some places strive to do that. Others, well, not so much. And we need to remember to go back to our logical mind. We need to look for logical consistency. If you read something and it doesn't make sense or it doesn't hang together, it's probably not true. You need to do your research. I could be wrong, but you need to find out. So if you follow the argument and you go, that doesn't end up where I think it should end up, that's probably a clue, because that's a part of using our instincts. You know, the old adage still applies. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Throughout our history, we have told stories. Some of them educate, some of them amuse, some of them share information, some explain our presence on earth. There have always been those who were committed to telling the truth as they understood it. And perhaps as another example of our human creativity, there have also been those who perceived that there was a benefit in stretching and obscuring and blending or obliterating the truth to serve their own needs. In that case, it's also, for us, a case of buyer beware. Pay attention to what you're looking at. With the capabilities of the computer, the internet, and AI, there are infinitely more ways that we can be misled, purposely scammed, or lied to. And there are an overwhelming number of ways we can be led to follow our worst instincts, investigate the darker sides of life, and indulge our impulses. Each of us will be confronted with opportunities and options we may have never even thought of before. Do you ever look at something and go, wow, how did they do that? That looks really amazing. And then realize, that's all made up. And we will be challenged, perhaps, to make a discerning choice about how we will use the tools that are available to us. As Unitarians, we have our 8 principles as a tool that we can use to consider our actions and our decisions. We can bounce things off those 8 principles and say, is this dignified? Does this push forward the worth of everyone? In all those kinds of things that we do in our principles. We can use that as a way to discern a truth that we choose to live with and live our lives in congruity with our values. Because stories have been around for a long time. They're one of our favorite things, and I don't think they're going to go away anytime soon.